but not only a double portion, but we're ending Bmidbar. So we're coming out of the wilderness, not quite yet. We still have another book to go, but we're coming into position and coming into place to start to see the promise, to learn how to walk in the promise, not just how to walk in the wilderness, right? Because the goal is to keep in mind what the Father desires for us, to grow us, to nurture us, to change us, and to cause us to walk in the promise that he says we have, right? The thing is, it's not just a matter of like the physical place of the land. The Father is trying to work Egypt out of them, and so that they can go into the promise as different people, different circumstances. You know, I mean, he redeemed them, so that's a process of being renewed and a process of being new, right? But we, along the way, sometimes the old ways, the old nature, the old mindsets, the thing, they just kind of pop up again. And we see through Bmidbar, a lot of people made some like really big, really bad mistakes, you know, but not everyone in Israel did this consistently. Now, in the incident with the spies, it's a different story. You know, all Israel mourned and wailed and cried out, but for most of the wilderness, it's not like all Israel did these things. We have some exceptional people who we read about, okay? So not losing track of that, but the idea is, like we pray, thy kingdom come. Well, it's not like someday, somehow your kingdom's going to come. No, the idea is his kingdom be established here on the earth, that we walk in it here now. Now, it'll come in its fullness someday, but we can walk in his kingdom here because we are his people, right? So they're getting ready to go into the land. They're getting ready to close out this chapter of their life, Bmidbar, life in the wilderness. And what do you think Yahweh is trying to tell his people as they're about to go in? Now, it's interesting because Devarim, you know, next parsha, Devarim, you read, these are the words that Moses gave, that Moses spoke, and what we find, like last week, was the last conversation that we have recorded between Yahweh and Moshe, where Moshe is speaking to Yah speaking, you know, this back and forth conversation. So things are closing here, and there's starting to be something else that's going to be established. So here, what is the Father directing to Moshe to relay to the people? And it's interesting because one of the first things we see in this chapter is the authority and the weight of your words. Interesting, isn't it? You know, Matot Masei. Matot is tribes, Masei is journeys, right? So here we're talking about the heads of the tribes and talking to all Israel, and speaking to all the tribes. And the idea is not that they just remain separate by tribe or identity, but that they collectively are a people called Israel. They have their own identity within that, but they need to learn to work together as a people of Israel. And in that, we have to be careful of the words that we say and the words that we speak. What did we learn in the wilderness? That words are important, right? Because how many times did people cause a lot of problems because of the things that they said? And it's not just that they said it, it's the reasons why they were said in the first place, right? Korah, why did Korah speak out the way that he did? Because there was offense in his heart, offense in his life. And so we find different things throughout here where people are speaking, but we need to be careful of what we're speaking. We need to stop for a minute and kind of reflect on what we're about to say before we say, right? Because here's the thing. You might be able to apologize for something that you said, but you can never unsay it. Okay? And sometimes an apology isn't enough. You know, so we have to be careful of these things, and especially when we're speaking to Yahweh, especially when we're speaking to his people. We have to be careful of the things that we say and how we say them and how we approach one another, right? Okay, you ready to jump into this? Well, let's take a look at Numbers 30, starting with verse 2. When a man makes a vow to Adonai or formally obligates himself by swearing an oath, he is not to break his word, but he is to do the most of what he said. No. He is to do what? Everything he said he would do. Now, the importance of this is it's not just about making a vow, it's about integrity. It's about honor. It's about reflecting the heart of the king to those that we have around us. If people realize, if I speak to this person and they say they're going to do something, I can count on it, then it's not just your integrity that you're looking at, it's the integrity of the God that you serve. Because unfortunately, people will make a judgment against the God that you serve based on your words and actions. Now, that's not fair. Sure, it's not. But that's the way it is. Because that's the way people are. Right? So we have to make sure that our words and our actions reflect the heart of the Father. So if we say we're going to do something, we need to do it. If we say we're not, then we don't. And you ever heard the phrase, overextending yourself? What happens when you overextend yourself? You always end up not being able to fulfill something you said you were going to do, and people end up getting upset and getting hurt, and there's offenses and all this other kind of stuff, when if at the very beginning of the whole thing you would have said, I can't, no. Yeah, well, they're going to get upset if I say no. Hey, at least you said what you meant. And then they can find somebody else to do whatever. See, and this is the point, kind of like parents with your children. If you say no, throwing a tantrum doesn't mean yes all of a sudden. Okay? Matter of fact, there are consequences for those actions. If you say no, mean no. If you say yes, mean yes. And if you don't know, there's no harm in saying that either. Well, I don't know. Let me look at some things. Right? Just be careful of what you say. Mean what you say. All right. Moving on. Vows. What happens in a vow? We think, we come up with an idea, we come up with a statement, we come up with something, and then we say it, and then we act on it, if we follow it through, right? So if we follow through with a vow, we don't just stand here and mind-numbingly just start saying things. No, you have it within you to purpose to say something. So you say it, you make a vow, and if you say it, you make a vow, you do it. Now we think to make a vow means that I stand here, my hand to heaven. No, that's not really, that's just theatrics. Okay? What we need to understand is that as people of Yahweh, all of our words hold weight. At the very beginning, Yahweh spoke. And things started happening. You're created in His image. The things that you speak, the words that you speak, they carry weight. You can build things up with your speech, or you can tear things down with your speech. A good word at the right time can mean everything to someone who's going through a hard time. But the wrong word at the I don't know if you want to say wrong or right time in that, but a wrong word spoken can really bring harm to somebody. So we have to be careful of these things, right? Let's look forward. So by your words, okay, in the wilderness, what were the people constantly saying? It seems, I'm not going to go on record as saying this is fact, but it seems that the constant was, you brought us out here to die. What are you doing to us, Moses? You brought us out here to die. We should have just stayed in Egypt because we're going to die out here. And it finally got to a point where after the spies were sent into the land and they came back with a slanderous report, and they took their eyes off the promise of Yahweh and they believed the slanderous report. They wailed, they cried out, and they said, that's it, we're going to die, our children, we're all going to die. And then Yahweh said, essentially, from your lips to His ears, He says, that which you say I will do to you. In other words, they couldn't get past it. There was this stronghold in their life that they could not get past, saying, that's it, we're going to die out here in the wilderness. We might as well. And every time life got hard, that's it, we're going to die out here. That's it, we just give up. That's it, we're going to die. We're never going to make it. We're just going to die. And finally, God said, well, you're obviously not going to trust me enough to get over this, so let's get to the next generation. You're right, you're going to die out here. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, what? We're going to die out here? Yeah. Yeah, you are. Because they didn't trust Yahweh. They didn't have the faith to go into the land that He said was theirs. Right? So, the vow you carry through. So, words in the wilderness. Yeshua said, by your words you will be judged. I thought it wasn't the words. I thought it was just actions. But the words and the actions go together. Right? Yeshua said, Matthew 12:35, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth what? Good things. And an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth what? Evil things. But I say to you that every idle word men speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by your words you shall be justified, by your words you shall be condemned. By what you say. Yeah, but you know what they said to me first? Irrelevant. By what you say. Because just because someone has done something toward you does not give you the right as a righteous person of Yahweh to respond in evil. Yeshua says, don't return evil for evil. You know? So again, though someone else has done something, and yes, it could be wrong, do we have the right to respond in like manner? Because they will have to stand before the Father, and they will have to try to justify themselves as much as we might try, that what they did, it's just wrong. But when you stand before him, you cannot point a finger at anybody else. Yeah, but they. I'll handle with them, talking to you. See? So we have to make sure our heart is right. Okay? Proverbs 20, verse 25. It is a snare to dedicate a gift to God rashly and reflect on the vows afterward. Oh, how many times have we heard stuff like this? God, if you get me out of this mess, I will, or I will never. Right? And then it works out, and we're like, do we follow through? Oh, maybe for a week. And it's like, oh, God, I got this. Don't worry about it. It's under control. Don't say something, dedicate something to Yah, and then later say, well, I was just under duress. Proverbs 25:14. Like clouds and wind that bring no rain is he who boasts of gifts he never gives. Wow. What happens when there's the clouds and wind that doesn't bring any rain? It's just a storm, no rain. We need the rain because that waters the crops. It's what gives life. So the idea behind this is they're loud and boisterous, bunch of blowhards, but they don't give any life. Right? Deuteronomy 23:21. So when you vow a vow unto Yahweh your God, you shall not slack to pay it. For Yahweh your God, for Yahweh your God will surely require it of you, and it would be sin in you. But if you shall forbear to vow, it shall be no sin in you. That which is gone out of your lips, you shall keep and perform, even a free will offering, according as you have vowed to Yahweh your God, which you promised with your mouth. Here's the catch, guys. Nowhere in the Torah, nowhere in the scriptures do we find a command for you to make a vow. Nowhere. When a person makes a vow, it is something they have took on themselves. So what the Torah says, it says when you make a vow. It doesn't say, I command that you shall make a vow and therefore. Okay? It says when you make a vow. Right? Because God knows us. No, it's kind of like, well, God knows my heart. Yes, he does. That's why we have the Torah. Right? So here we are. If you make a vow, then these are the things associated with it. Kind of like, so when you have a king, God didn't say he wanted them to have a king, but they're like, we want a king. All the other people have a king. That nation has a king. We want a king. So God says, so when you say you want a king and you reject me, I'm going to at least give you some parameters for having a king. So like this, when you make a vow, if you make a vow, these are the parameters that go along with it. And if you notice, they all pretty much tie into, if you say it, do it. Really. Because it's not just your integrity at stake. Scripture says that people will see the good things that you do and glorify your Father in heaven. And the same of that is opposite. People will see the negative things in our life, which we're not perfect. We make mistakes. And unfortunately, people look at our shortcomings and say, see, God can't help them with that. And trust me, God will deal with that criticism and that attitude as well. Okay? But for us, if we are acknowledging something, if we're aware of something, then we repent and we move on and try not to make the same mistakes. Right? So if we say something, do it. Right? James 1, 5 through 8. So if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in trust, let him ask in faith, doubting nothing. For the doubter is like a wave in the sea being tossed and driven by the wind. Indeed, that person should not think he will receive what? Anything from the Lord. Verse 8, why? Because he is double-minded. And if he is double-minded, he is unstable in all his ways. If you're double-minded, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, there's no foundation there. You're slipping and sliding all over the place. Another wind comes. It's funny how the word for wind, ruach, right? Another spirit comes by, another teaching comes by, another something comes by. You're like, ooh, I like that, and we're off. You know, just like a kite, you know, the wind blows us that way, the wind blows us that way, the wind blows us that way. We need to make sure that we're following the right wind. You know, we need to make sure that we're not being double-minded, because if we're double-minded, we're unstable. Okay, so we need to make sure we're submitting to the Father, which means be of one heart, of one mind, of one purpose. It's not like, oh, well, you have a good point. Oh, well, you have a good point. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, but you have a good point. At some point, you got to make a decision. You know? It's like, how does the saying go? The roads are full of squirrels who couldn't make a decision, something like that. It's like, you know, we're like that sometimes. We have to make a decision. It's bearing down on us, and we can't decide what to do, and we're like, FUD, you know? I mean, make a decision. And if you have a question on what it should be, guess what? We have the Word, and we have plenty of people around to help us. You know? So we can always seek wise counsel. Just make sure that the people you're seeking wise counsel from are also not double-minded. You know? James 4, 7 and 8. Therefore submit to God, moreover take a stand against the adversary, and he will flee from you. Come close to God, and he will come close to you. Clean your hands, sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded people. Because if we're double-minded, how can we truly trust Yahweh if we're double-minded? God, I trust you, but maybe later. We can't quite do that, can we? We either trust him or we don't. And the first step in acknowledging that we can trust him is acknowledging the areas where we don't. Saying, God, I trust you. And then he says, what about that? Oh, well, I thought I trusted you. Here, God, you take that too. You know, we have to learn to do that, right? So if we're double-minded, what happens? We'll say one thing and mean another. If we're double-minded, we're not growing up. If we're double-minded, we're not maturing. If we're double-minded, we are not submitting to Yahweh. And if we're double-minded, we're being tossed around all over the place. There's no peace in that. And if we're not submitted to the Father and walking in his ways, then we're open to any teaching that comes down the road. If it just sounds logical, then we're off with it. It doesn't matter if it sounds logical, because you know what? When man fell, he ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We can have logical things that sound good. It doesn't mean it's what the Father desires. See? So, if we have to make sure that we're not double-minded, so that we're not susceptible to everything coming down the road. Because even Hasatan can come as an angel of light. We need to learn to discern. Right? So 2 main types of vows. Okay? 2 main types of vows. One is to prohibit yourself from something that is allowable. Here's an example. Fasting. You make a vow, and so you can prohibit from eating. Eating is permissible. You need food to live, right? You're allowed to eat. So if you abstain from that, you're fasting, that's permissible. You can do that. But that's a type of this thing. That's a type of a vow. So a vow is to refrain from something that is allowable. And the other thing is to obligate yourself to something beyond, like additional offerings or additional volunteer work or like mitzvot or contributing to specific causes or, to obligate yourself to something. Okay? So one is to refrain and the other one is to do. And do we look at these things in types of vows? Oh, hey, yeah, man, I'll be there. I'll help you tomorrow morning. Just call me. And then our phone gets turned on silent. Uh-huh. Yeshua brought our words to a higher level, didn't he? Yeshua made the point to saying that the words that you speak are equal to vows or oaths. The words that you speak, it's not just saying when I make a vow, that's a higher level. No, the words that you speak in everyday life and everyday conversation carries the same weight as when you make a vow, because they're still your words. They're still the things that you speak. So Yeshua says very simple, let yes be yes, let no be no. Anything else is wickedness. So we need to learn to do that. If we say yes, mean yes. And then do it wholeheartedly. Don't commit to something and then show up and say, well, I'm here, let's get it over with. If you say you're going to do it, do it. Be all in. And if you say you can't, then you can't. Right? Matthew 5:33. Again, you have heard that our fathers were told, do not break your oath and keep your vows to Adonai. But I tell you, not to swear at all. Not by heaven, because it is God's throne. Not by the earth, because it is his footstool. Not by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great king. None of these things that you have any control over. None of these things you have any authority over. You have no control over these things. And people were making vows by things that they had no control to make a vow over. All right? So Yeshua is just saying very simple, that yes be yes, no be no. Don't swear by your head, because you can't make a single hair white or black. Of course, it's a little different nowadays. They dye it, but you know. But then it grows back in its regular color. Yeshua says, let yes be yes, no be no. Anything more than this has its origin in evil. So we've got to understand, guys, our words have power. Do what we say we will do. Do not do what we say we will not do. And don't speak too quickly. You know, Yeshua says, be quick to hear, slow to speak. We have to count the cost of our words. You know, sometimes we say something and then sometimes things get lost in translation. I'm not really talking about that, because sometimes cultural issues and backgrounds, we might say something but it means something different to someone else. I'm not really talking about those kind of things. What I'm saying is, if you say what you mean, be careful and don't speak too quickly, right? Count the cost of something before you go into it. James 1:19. Therefore, my dear brothers, let every person be what? Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to what? Get angry. Why? Because a person's anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. Think about that. When we get angry, are we really concerned about walking righteously? No. I mean, just be honest, we're not. When we get angry, something within us, you know, our ideas, our rights, or whatever, we feel is violated, and then we get angry, and then we don't stop to consider how our actions are affecting others, or we don't stop to consider how this is reflecting on the Father. You know, when we get angry, we're not really concerned about walking righteously. Even Moses, go out and speak to the rock. What did he do? He struck the rock. And he didn't just go out and strike the rock, okay, let me get back to work. No, see, he goes out and he stands in front of this rock and he says, listen up, you rebels. Shall we bring you water from this rock? It's like, again, really? You know, kind of, right? And so here, you know, Moshe, in his anger, yelling out, calling these guys rebels, essentially he's working rebelliously right now. You know, and that's why he couldn't go into the land. God said, because you did not sanctify me in the presence of Israel. Why? Because he didn't do what he was supposed to do. Right? He wasn't obedient. He let his anger get the best of him. Right? And so, therefore, he didn't do what was righteous. He didn't do what God said that was righteous and what God said he wanted him to do. He did his own thing, and he had a great price to pay for it. Right? Our anger can hurt ourselves, and it can hurt others. Got to be careful. James 1:26. Do any of you think you're religious? If you do not control your tongue, your religion is worthless, and you deceive yourselves. Wow. James just needs to learn to speak a little nicer. I love the book of James, because he's just like right here. You know? And it seems like with each word, he gets like a millimeter closer. And by the end of the book, he's like nose to nose. It's like, are you listening to me? I love the book of James because he's very real. And he's very to the point. These are the things we have to keep in mind, right? Ecclesiastes 5, 1 through 7. Keep your foot when you go to the house of Elohim, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before Elohim. For Elohim is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. For a dream comes through the multitude of busyness, and a fool's voice is known by the multitude of words. Some translations say nightmares come from busyness. Just too much busyness. And you can say busyness or busybody. I mean, they'll both work there, you know. So a fool's voice is known with a multitude of words. You ever meet people who just love to speak, to hear themselves speak? And just like you have a 30-minute conversation with them, and you're like, they didn't say one thing. Verse 4. When you vow a vow to Elohim, defer not to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vowed. In other words, if you make a vow, do it. Better is it that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Didn't we already read that? Doesn't the Torah say that? Suffer not your mouth to cause your flesh to sin, or put it in the vernacular of when we were growing up. Your body's writing checks. You're writing checks your body can't cash. Something like that, right? It says, be careful of what you commit yourself to that you can't follow through on. Right? Suffer not your mouth to cause your flesh to sin. Neither say before the angel, oh, I didn't mean it. It was an accident. I didn't really intend to make the vow. And it's like we think making a vow is some grand gesture of standing with our hand to heaven, making proclamations. Vows can be very simple things that we might say every day that we commit or not, or we work against, and we don't follow through with. Even anything that we say we dedicate or commit to Yah, and we don't follow through on, it's like a vow. So wherefore should Elohim be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For in the multitude of dreams and many words there are diverse vanities, but fear Elohim. Okay, Psalm 22:25. Because of you I give praise in the great assembly. I will fulfill my vows in the sight of those who fear him. The vows were fulfilled publicly. Why publicly? Because they were done in the tabernacle, in the temple, right? They were done where they were visible. Psalm 66:13, I will come into your house with burnt offerings. I will fulfill my vows to you, those that my lips pronounced and my mouth spoke when I was in distress. He's saying that I will fulfill my vows, even the ones that I did speak rashly, and I did speak while I was in distress. I said it, therefore I will carry it through. Right? Proverbs 13:3, be careful what you say and protect your life, because a careless talker destroys himself. It's funny how you can spend years and years and years trying to build credibility. One mistake is all it takes. It's unfortunate. It shouldn't be that way, because we all make mistakes. But one mistake is all it makes for someone to discredit you and to say, see? And the problem with that is we don't allow ourselves a place of repentance and restoration. You know? Words carry weight. But some words we take to heart, we should not. Agree? How many people today are struggling with things that they were told when they were children? You know, someone told either a parent or an authority figure or some other kids or whatever, spoke words and made comments to children, and today they're still cutting, still hurting, still taking to heart. It molded and shaped our worldview when that's not what we were supposed to do with it. And many people are living in fear and living in distress and living in great things because of words that were spoken 30 years ago. So whether these words are given from others or ourselves, These words can create strongholds, and they can help to fuel offense. Words lead to action. True? We say it, it's out there, then the ball gets rolling, right? So words lead to action, and sometimes words challenge mindsets. Words can even expose faults, either with ourselves or others, right? So some words challenge our thoughts and our ideas, and the question is, how do we handle these? Especially when we're dealing with the things of Yahweh, especially when we're dealing with His people, we expect something to be like this, and it's not, so how do we handle the difference? Right? John 6, verses 60 to 71. When many of His disciples heard it, they said, "This is a hard saying. Who can listen to it?" Yeshua, He said, "You must eat my flesh, drink my blood," right? He didn't mean literally, right? But here's what He was saying. So, but then Yeshua, knowing in Himself that His disciples were grumbling, He said, "Do you take offense at this?" He knew where they were at. Do you take offense at this? And then, what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where He was before? It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh is no help at all. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life. Verse 64. But there are some of you who do not believe. For Yeshua knew from the beginning who those were who did not believe and who it was who would betray Him. And He said, "This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted him by the Father." Look at the next verse. After this, many of His disciples turned back and no longer walked with Him. Yeshua had said some things that in their mind they couldn't reconcile. They just couldn't handle these things, and therefore they just walked away from Him. They didn't follow Him anymore. Wow. So why do you think we are above and beyond that? Verse 67. So Yeshua said to the 12, "Do you want to go away as well?" Notice Yeshua had more than 12 disciples. It's just the 12 that were always with Him. Okay? But then he got to the point where many didn't follow Him, and there He was with the 12 again. 68. Simon Peter answered to Him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And we have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God." And Yeshua answered, Did I not choose you, the 12, and yet one of you is a devil? He spoke of Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, for he, one of the 12, was going to betray Him. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Yeshua picked the 12 knowing He was going to be betrayed, knowing that one would take offense at Him and would betray Him. Wow. So here's the thing. If we allow offenses to grab hold of us, we will end up walking away in our own ways. Because we have ideas of the way things should be. When they're not this way, we get offended. And because, well, you're not doing it this way, or how about this? Because I see that you have sin in your life, or because I see that you've made mistakes, I have to walk away from you. You need to look in the mirror, guys, because you're no better. How did someone put it? We like judging people when they sin differently than we do. Ouch. It's not the way it should be. And I'm not saying just to turn a blind eye either. I'm not saying, oh, just ignore it. I'm saying, what are we supposed to do in those situations? To try to help bring reconciliation and restoration. If there's an offense, you go to them. Scripture says that with as much as it is possible, live at peace with all men. Thing is, not everybody's going to want peace, but that's why they say with as much as it is up to you. Again, you try to dwell in peace. If they don't want it, that's up to them. But you do what is right. Okay? Now, here's another thing that's kind of hard to hear, and I know that you guys are like jumping for joy at this, right? But here's another point. If you have a button, you know where I'm going with this? Well, they just push my buttons. If you have a button, it will get pushed. Think about it for a second. If we have a pet doctrine or a pet thing or a pet subject that if we see something that offends us, do you think for 1 second Hasatan is not going to make sure somehow, some way that button gets pushed? Especially if it causes you harm and causes you to eventually walk away? Do you think for 1 minute He doesn't know how to get us to fight against ourselves? It's not that, oh, I have a button and they better stay away from it. The fact that you have a button at all is a place for us to repent. Except for me, I have a button right there. Long story, but I do. I have a titanium button in my knee. My wife can push it anytime she wants. If you know the story, cool. If not, So, if we're looking to work something out, we will try every avenue we can to work it out. True? If we really want something, we'll try everything we can, every way we can, every how to make it happen, right? But if we don't want to do something, it just takes one thing to derail it and say, well, that's it, I'm not doing it. It's a sign from God that I shouldn't do it. Funny how we are, isn't it? If it's something we want and God says don't do that, we'll try to work around it. And we'll try anything way we can to make sure, are you sure, God, as we're trying to, make things happen. And if it's something that God says, this is what I want you to do, but it's hard, oh, see, no, see, that door shut. I'm not supposed to do that. Really? Okay. Galatians 6:9-10 says, let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So then, as we have opportunity, do what? Let us do good to who? Everyone. Yeshua says, bless those who despitefully use you. He said, bless them that curse you. Right? Doesn't that go along with what the Torah tells us to do? Do good to everyone, but especially to those of the household of faith. We are supposed to show the heart of the Father to everyone, not just people we like. We need to show the heart of the Father to everyone. Why? Because we need to plant those seeds. Hopefully that through a kingdom of people walking in His ways will draw all to Him. Right? Hebrews 10:24. So let us consider one another to provoke. Uh-oh, that's it. We're supposed to provoke one another. We're going to go have fun tonight. But what are we supposed to provoke each other to? Unto good works and love. Unto love and good works. Can you imagine what kind of society we would live in if we tried to outdo each other in showing love to one another and doing good to one another? Can you imagine what America would look like if we all did that? Amazing, isn't it? 25. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. The day is approaching, guys. We're seeing it. And we're finding more and more people are not wanting to gather because of offenses. But here's the thing. When God gathered all Israel to the mountain, do you think they enjoyed each other all the time? But they were still at the mountain together. They were still in the wilderness together. They still journeyed as tribes and as Israel together. In Yeshua's day, there was like one synagogue per city. We get offended at someone in the synagogue, so we're going to go to the one down the street? It didn't exist. You either worked it out or you didn't go. So, again, these are just things that we need to see. We need to show the heart of the Father. And I understand sometimes things can't get worked out, but if both parties are willing, then guess what? It will get worked out. Right? Numbers 35:2. Let's move on. Tell the Israelites that from the property they receive, they must give the Levites some cities to live in and pasture land around in the cities. See, when they go into the land, all the tribes were given portions of the land by lots. Okay? And so they determined where they were going. Now, the Levites, where did they get a property of land that was theirs? They didn't. So, scattered among all Israel, they made cities in all areas of all the tribes so that there were Levites everywhere. Because what were the jobs of the Levites? To teach the people, to show the heart of the Father, to teach them His ways, to get in the Word, to go to Jerusalem and serve, to do these things, right? So there had to be Levites everywhere, right? The Levites were scattered throughout all, and they were given their inheritance by God through the people. Because if the people didn't give toward the Levites, guess what? The Levites didn't get. God said He would provide for the Levites. And so can you imagine if Israel said, see, Yahweh said he's going to provide for the Levites. Why do I have to do it? Let God provide for the Levites. Okay, so don't let a blessing come on your home. God provided for the Levites through his people. All right. The Levites were given 42 cities. Interesting number, isn't it? How many encampments did they have in the wilderness? 42. So, 42 encampments. And this is to point forward, I think, to the 3.5 years. You know, Daniel's times he's talking about in 3.5 years, these other things. You know, I think this is kind of speaking prophetically in there as well, the Levite cities. And there were 6 cities added. 6 is what? Number of man. Why were these cities added? Because if someone was guilty, if they shed blood, these were sanctuary cities, and they could go there and wait for a redeemer. If there was no redeemer, they remained guilty, but they could stay in the city in refuge. Now, if they killed and they had intent to kill and they fled to the city, then the people came searching for him, then they were questioned, and then basically there was a trial, and it was determined if this person shed blood innocently, like manslaughter, okay, or if it was premeditated murder. And if it was murder, they handed him over. But if not, they were protected. Okay? Now, they were guilty even if they were innocent. What does that mean? Like I said, like manslaughter. You didn't intend to, but you shed blood. You killed someone, it was an accident. Okay? But it happened. So, you would have a place, a sanctuary where you could go where you didn't have to fear the repercussions of that action. You shed blood, so blood will be shed kind of thing, right? Okay, now here's the interesting thing. You were there, you were guilty, but when the high priest died, you could go free. Your guilt was erased. Wow. Are you getting a picture of something? Yeah, I believe that's pointing forward to Yeshua and the end times, right? So Numbers 36:7. The inheritance of the people of Israel shall not be transferred from one tribe to another. The inheritance that was given to Israel was given to Israel. The inheritance he had for the tribes was given to that tribe. We even see like Yovel, like in the Jubilee years when all Israel was to go back to the land and all the debts were forgiven, all these things happened, but they went back to the land that was theirs, that was given to them by Lot, by Yahweh, right? So they didn't just go to Israel and start, I'll just pick a place. They went back to their inheritance. They went back to the heritage that was given to them and passed on, right? Okay, so this is for every one of the people of Israel shall hold to the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. In other words, it was passed on from generation to generation to generation. You can't change it. God decreed it. The area that was given to Judah will always be for Judah. The area that was given to Ephraim will always be Ephraim. The area that was given to Reuven will always be for him. I mean, this is just the way it was supposed to be. And the idea behind this is hold on to the inheritance that Yahweh gave you. You see, many of us have an inheritance that we don't know what it is. But Yahweh has given an inheritance of his word to us. We must learn to receive it and to walk in it. Part of this reason why we don't understand that we have an inheritance in the things of Yahweh, we have an inheritance that was passed on from his Torah, is because we don't know who we are. As a child of Elohim, we have great promises in the Word that are given to us, but they're passed on in His Word. If we don't know what the Word says, we don't know the blessings that are for us. So everything that you have been given in this world will go away. Everything in this world that you have will disappear. But the things that are eternal is the Word of the living God. Isaiah 40, verse 8. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the Word of our God shall stand forever. Romans 3:4. Let God be true and every man a liar, even as it has been written that you should be justified in your words and will overcome in your being judged. John 17:17, Yeshua's prayer for his Talmidim is he says, sanctify them through your truth. And then he says, just for the sake of clarifying truth, your word is truth. We've said it before, I'm going to say it again. There are a lot of things that are true. There's a lot of things that you can make statements that are true. But there's only one truth. You know the difference? The truth is absolute. True is part of that truth. So you could say a lot of things that are true, but only the word of the living God is truth. Psalm 119, 142 says, your righteousness is eternal righteousness, and your Torah is what? Truth. If his Torah is truth, then do you think there's ever a time that Yahweh says he will do away with it? No. Psalm 119, 150, and 151. The pursuers of carnality are getting close. They are distancing themselves from your Torah. The pursuers of carnality distance themselves from the word of God. But, next verse says, you are close by Adonai, and all your mitzvot are truth. Psalm 119, 160. The main thing about your word is, drum roll, that it's true. We can rely on it. The word of the living God is true. And all your just rulings last until the Messiah comes. No. Last how long? Forever. So Numbers 36:13. These are the commandments and the judgments which Yahweh commanded by the hand of Moshe to the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Yarden near Jericho. They're now poised for the promise. They're by the Jordan. They can see the land. It's right there on the other side of the Jordan. It's right there. They can see it. And can you imagine the excitement in the camp? Can you imagine the feelings of the people? Here we are, that we've heard all of our lives about this place that we're going to, because remember, this is the next generation as we go into Devarim of those who were aged 20 and under at the sin of the spies. So this is the next generation. Wow. Everything we've heard about our whole life is right there. And everything we have right now is in preparation for us to go in and possess it. Is there any wonder that Yahweh says, as you get ready to go in to take possession of the land, I want you to be aware of the words that you speak to one another? Because how many of us say, I got your back? And why are you laughing? Because you know. Yeah, you know. Someone says, I got your back. I start to look to see if they're holding a knife. Because a lot of times, and it's not all the time the case, guys, but I'm just saying, a lot of times, the ones who are strongly professing, I got your back, when the battle comes, they run. You got to be careful of the words that you speak. And you got to be careful of the words that you allow yourself to receive. Why? Because it's all testifying to the goodness of your God. And it's all a part of us learning to dwell together. So let's do so wholeheartedly. With all our heart, with all our soul, and all our might, let's love the Lord our God, and let's work on treating our neighbor like ourselves, loving our neighbor as ourselves. Amen? All right, let's all stand.